morning and welcome to the fourth Sunday of Advent. I am coming to you out from our new home in Longmont, Colorado. Come on in. I just want to invite you inside to see what our lives have been like since the pandemic. When you first enter our house, you come into the living room where we welcome our guest. And down this hallway, you can see leads to our bedrooms and a little bit of quiet space. Over here, it's hard to see in the light, but this slider leads out to a big yard filled with snow. We have on this direction our kitchen and dining table where we like to greet our family and friends, where we like to welcome people into our home. You see, inviting you into our house this morning is an act of love. Regis and I usually host a Christmas party each year where we invite my church family and friends all to gather together in our homes to get to know each other. In the family I was raised, hospitality is an act of Christian love. I like to polish my grandmother's silver trays and make all of my southern treats. But when I first became your pastor, I thought that the 35-minute drive down I-25 might be a little bit too much to ask from new and complete strangers. And then there came some strife and some difficulty in the church and in our family. And I was looking so forward to welcoming you all to my home this Christmas. And then came the pandemic. So now house parties are not even safe. So Regis and I decided to welcome you in this way to our home, and I'm grateful to him for all of the filming. So here we are in my living room for one last message before the main event of this season. The Latin words of the carol that we just sang, Adeste Fidelis, give me such joy. I don't speak Latin, Hebrew, or Greek, and sometimes the fluent German that I've spoken for the last 20 plus years is even a little rusty. But when I sing that chorus, I feel like I'm part of the angel chorus, singing in the heavens triumphantly over all of the earth about the baby boy that was born that night. We come this season to adore Christ, and that is what the love of God is all about. Not babies and angels and silent nights, but about uniting hearts all around the world to choose love over fear, joy over pain, and hope over despair. When we adore Jesus Christ, we are falling in love, not only with a precious newborn baby, but with his radical message of inverted power structures, choosing relationship over being right, and choosing to love God, ourselves, and all of our fellow humankind. This is a free love, but it is not a love free of demands or expectations. In fact, the price is high. We must pay with our lives, with the death of our egos, with our selfish plans set aside, and with our controlling natures squelched. We must die to ourselves and follow this baby into manhood, take up our crosses of shame and guilt and brokenness and lay them at the foot of Jesus' cross. We must risk in this relationship being truly seen, being deeply known, and still being adored and loved beyond measure, lifted up in ways that we are not familiar with, in ways that we can't even dream about, in ways that make some of us uncomfortable. Sometimes I feel like a crazy person, shouting to the Lord, all the earth, breaking out in praise and singing for joy. But then I glance into the Psalms, and I realize that I am not alone, dancing and rejoicing and letting loose. I can't play the harp or the trumpet, and the few notes that I might still be able to squeak out from my high school days on the French horn will probably not sound very joyful. But when I sing Adeste Fidelis, in this season when I sing many of our favorite Christmas carols, I can hear the melody of God's creation. I hear it each time that I look up into the Rocky Mountains where my 3-year-old son says, "Look, I can see Daddy at work." I hear it in the symphony of bird songs. I hear it when I hold one of my children and snuggle them tight. We have a lot to be thankful for and joyful for and triumphant about, especially in this year. Sure, 2020 has provided so many challenges, stresses, struggles, and downward plummeting emotions and moments. But we have also seen the great light of generosity and connection and possibility. We've learned new ways to worship and even to preach virtually, and yet not socially distanced. We may be distanced from each other physically, but in our hearts, there are many ways to connect, and I know many stories of how you have cared for one another with a great love of Jesus Christ. So I want to thank you this season. I want to thank you for all that you have done and all that you are for your example of love in our community. We've clung tightly this year to many of our hopes and dreams, even while we were swimming in some pretty rough seas, even when we were walking on some very difficult paths. I wonder if you could picture Mary, a 12 to 14-year-old girl, pregnant, scared, alone, walking 9 days or more to visit her relative Elizabeth in Ein Karim, wondering if the older woman might question or shame her for her unwed pregnancy. Then picture Elizabeth, an elderly woman with a miraculous pregnancy growing inside of her, isolated at home for 6 months, afraid of what others would say. The only company, her husband Zechariah, a man who had been muted by the angel Gabriel when he questioned in disbelief the fact that his wife would conceive a child. Elizabeth also was alone and pregnant and scared. These two women were in need of friendship, in need of family, in need even of physical touch and connection, something all of us are in need of, especially this year, when we are so used to giving hugs and handshakes and warm smiles, instead watching the world through those tiny Zoom screens or FaceTime boxes is difficult. And yet, God is still with us. Each woman alone was watching her belly swell with holiness and pregnancy, but the miraculous nature of these pregnancies did not give them alone the comfort that they needed. They needed one another. We need one another. So, God gives them to one another. Babies leaping for joy within their bellies, blessing these two women with 3 months of sisterhood to prepare for the mighty act of giving birth. Having lived through childbirth twice, I can assure you that giving birth is a great act of sacrificial love. God could have come into our world through exploding firework displays or through miracles of quantum physics, halting all time and space and stunning us into silence. Instead, God chose to reveal God's self through birth. From a tight, dark womb, squeezing God's self through the pain of childbirth, fighting for life, risking disease and death in those dangerous, unhygienic first-century Palestinian days. It is a metaphor. Things are always darkest and most difficult and most painful just before the dawn. Love is waiting, even in our deepest darkness this year. God is sending unexpected angels so that we will not be alone. Take heart. Look around. It's almost time for a great miracle in our church, in our world, and in our hearts. Amen.